Country as an appreciative nation to the entire world at the final ODI between Sri Lanka and Australia played at the R. Premadasa Stadium in Colombo tomorrow. As the official broadcaster of the series, the national television, we invite you to witness this final Grand Slam encounter at the stadium tomorrow in yellow.
The final one-day international match between Sri Lanka and Australia is set to begin tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. at the R. Premadasa Stadium in Colombo. Sri Lanka has already secured the series with 3-1 thus far. Australia visited Sri Lanka for a full series after 2016. However, Australia's tour of Sri Lanka was in doubt with the prevailing economic crisis. Yet, Australian government and Cricket Australia decided to proceed with the tour to Sri Lanka as scheduled. Meanwhile, Cricket Australia named a squad with the best players in the contingent for the tour. Australia's visit to Sri Lanka is considered a relief for the economic growth amidst the crisis. Also, Sri Lanka has the opportunity to showcase the world that the country extends great hospitality and care for its visitors, even amidst tough times. Many legendary Sri Lankan cricketers, including Sanajay Surya, extended their gratitude for the Australian team for visiting the country during this difficult period. Sri Lankan champion sports personnel also extended their gratitude for the Australian side for visiting Sri Lanka. Large crowds were seen at the matches during the series between Sri Lanka and Australia. Tomorrow's final one-day international match in the series have been sold out thus far. Fans are excited to come to the stadium tomorrow to watch the match in all yellow. Views were also shared on social media platforms in this regard. The fifth and final one-day international match between Sri Lanka and Australia will be telecast live on ChannelEye from 2:30 p.m. onwards.
While we clad ourselves in yellow tomorrow for the big encounter, Indian Foreign Secretary Vinay Kwatra has said that the government of India will in fact extend its fullest support to Sri Lanka in overcoming the current difficult situation faced as a nation.
The Indian Foreign Secretary made these remarks during a meeting with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the President's house in Colombo this morning. The Indian delegation arrived in the island to consider further financial assistance to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has already received essential food items, fuel, medicine and fertilizer under the Indian Credit Line facility. The Indian delegation stated that the government of India and the political authorities are committed to provide continued support to Sri Lanka. On behalf of the government and the people of Sri Lanka, the President conveyed his gratitude to the government of India for its significant role in assisting Sri Lanka in difficult times. Both parties discussed on the future course of action of the Indian aid program to stabilize and revive the Sri Lankan economy at length. The delegation also expressed confidence that the country would recover soon, overcoming existing challenges. Indian Economic Relations Secretary Ajay Seth, Chief Economic Advisor Dr. V. Ananthan Nageswaran, Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka Gopal Bagle, Deputy High Commissioner Vinod K. Jacob, Joint Secretary Karthik Pandey and Secretary to the President Gamini Senarath were also present at this discussion. The Indian delegation met Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe this afternoon. In a tweet, Prime Minister Wickremesinghe said that fruitful talks were conducted with the delegation. The Prime Minister has further indicated that the talks will further strengthen the bilateral relations.
Minister Kanchana Vijayasekara says the shipment of 40,000 metric tons of octane 92 petrol will be delayed by a day. The oil tanker is expected, or rather was expected, to arrive in the country this morning. The minister made these remarks via a tweet. Accordingly, the minister said that limited quantities of petrol will be distributed today and tomorrow. Auto diesel will be distributed under full capacity, while limited quantities of super diesel will be distributed. Long queues were seen near many filling stations across the country, which prompted tense situations. Meanwhile, police headquarters has informed SSPs in charge of all divisions to investigate into persons involved in unnecessary disruptions and extortions. An individual had died this morning while being in a queue to obtain diesel near the Batagoda filling station. The individual has been identified as 63-year-old resident of Ahangama. He had worked as an assistant of a tipper. A 34-year-old individual had died last evening while remaining in a fuel queue for 3 days in Hinguraguda. The police took measures to remove a tipper which had forcibly attempted to obtain diesel from a filling station in Molliguda, Vadduwa. A group of persons near a filling station in Bandaragama who had been in a queue to obtain fuel for the past 5 days had interfered a fuel bowser last night and launched a protest action. Subsequently, the crowds dispersed following police mediation. Issuance of fuel for officers engaged in essential services including health and examination duties were conducted today as well. A tense situation occurred near Valimada cooperative filling stations yesterday over the issuance of fuel for essential services. The agitators claimed that certain individuals misused the fuel permit while claiming as essential services. The issuance of fuel for private buses was commenced yesterday from the Navalapitiya SLTB depot. Principals and teachers in schools in Valasmulla exempted from engaging in academic activities temporarily today due to the difficulties in acquiring fuel. A suspect with 300 litres of diesel hidden away in a house in Henapula Mirigama has been taken into custody. Another suspect with 1,200 litres of diesel and 120 litres of petrol hidden away in a house in Gonavala, Indurua has been taken into custody. Minister Mahinda Amaravira said that steps have been taken to provide fuel for farmers in 247 filling stations required for the Yalla season. Minister made these remarks during a meeting yesterday. The distribution of LAF's gas cylinders was carried out yesterday in Berula and surrounding areas after 6 months. 1,200 gas cylinders were distributed. LAF's gas cylinders were distributed for the residents at Soizapura flats after 6 months. 20 gas cylinders prepared to be transported to Colombo from Hatton had been intercepted by the Hatton police today. The Litro Gas companies said that they continue to issue LP gas for essential services, including hospitals and crematoriums. The United Nations in Sri Lanka launched an initiative to provide emergency relief through the private sector partnerships today. Addressing the event, Resident Coordinator of the United Nations in Sri Lanka, Hannah Singer Hamdi, says the time has come for the private sector to show solidarity and urgently support the humanitarian needs and priorities to plan to provide assistance for the most affected by the crisis.
The health and food sectors are two of the most heavily affected by the ongoing crisis in the country, with severe medical and food supply shortages. In this backdrop, the United Nations Development Programme in Sri Lanka has developed a giving facility comprising of two mechanisms. The first mechanism channels private sector funds towards procuring essential and non-essential medical supplies and address food security, while the second mechanism channels individual donations through a crowdfunding platform set up by the UNDP. In response, key private sector actors including Hemas Holdings PLC, Dilma Ceylon Tea Company, Brandix Apparel Limited and Daras Sri Lanka have come forward to pledge their commitment to provide assistance through this facility. This effort is expected to strengthen the initiatives of various entities including Ministry of Health, World Health Organization and Food and Agriculture Organization. Sarvodaya, the United Nations Global Compact Network Sri Lanka and ODOC Sri Lanka have come forward as strategic partners of the facility.
It's really now, and I know you're doing it, it's time that we show solidarity to prove that the Alliance for Humanity, and I think every one of our people who are in need now needs our collective alliance in order to survive and bypass these challenging times in the history. And these years are only moments in history. They will pass. They will pass, but they will pass with solidarity and with alliance between all the different partners.
There are two mechanisms, and we're launching one today and one more to come. It's the private sector contribution window that we're launching today. And we are doing that with the first comers, with the contributions from Hemas, from Brandix, from Dilma, and from Daras. And then later on, we are also having a window for individual contributions through like a crowdfunding online mechanism. So that's to come in a few weeks' time. I want to just say how grateful we are for the partnership and our sincere appreciation for the work that we can now do together.
We in FAO for sure do not look at the private sector only in terms of funding. We understand that you come with much more than funding. You come with your ideas, you come with your innovations, your technologies, your understandings, your own work in the field, which at times is much better than many governments and many other organizations. So we are with you all the way, beyond funding, beyond money, beyond your philanthropy, beyond your CSRs. We really admire you for your contribution to take the economy forward, whether it be in Sri Lanka or the global economy.
Minister Manusha Nanayakara says migrant workers who send money to Sri Lanka through legal channels will receive a permit to import electric vehicles.
The minister said that the relevant vehicle import permits will only be made available for migrant workers who send money through the banking system. Minister Manusha Nanayakara said that proposal will be submitted to the cabinet to grant a vehicle import permit for Sri Lankan migrant workers who carry the remittances through legal channels. Sri Lankan migrant workers who use legal channels for remittances will be given a permit to import electric vehicles. Minister Nanayakara said that permits will be granted only for Sri Lankan migrant workers who use the official banking channels to send foreign currency, even though importation of vehicles has been suspended by the government. Measures will be taken to enable electric vehicles that will be imported to be charged via solar power. A low-interest housing loan scheme will also be introduced for Sri Lanka migrant workers. He added that $305 million in remittances were received last month. Many issues in the country can be resolved if the remittances can be increased up to $500 to $600 million.
The independent parliamentary faction says to work closely with Russia to obtain essential commodities including fuel and LP gas. However, Samagi Janabalavegaya claims talks should be conducted with Middle Eastern countries to acquire fuel and LP gas. These remarks were shared during media briefings held in Colombo. In a letter to the President, parliamentarian Vasudeva Nanayakara said that they have proposed over the acquisition of fuel and fertilizer from Russia. However, he said that the President is yet to respond to this letter. He added that the leaders of the faction engaged in talks with the Russian officials and further pointed out that their ability to implement the agreed proposals. He also said that bilateral talks can be held between ministers of energy.
සංචාරකයන්ගේ පියදමට උවමාරුවේ මේ ඔක්කොම වීඩක් තියෙනවා. නමුත් ආරම්භක පියවර තියන්න ඕන වැඩි උවමනා ආදයනේ. රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයා පත් වෙලා
Parliamentarian Mujibur Rahman said that the Prime Minister is in the premiership for the last 1.5 months. He added that if an all-party government had been formed, more successful negotiations with foreign countries would have been possible under the present climate. He said that this crisis continues to prevail in such a scale after Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe prevented President Gotabaya Rajapaksa from resigning.
Parliamentarian Venerable Ratanathera arrived at the Criminal Investigation Department this morning to request an investigation over the allegation levelled by former President Maithripala Sirisena against the Thera related to the presidential pardon granted on Jude Shyamantha during a television program.
The parliamentarian made these remarks to the media after lodging a complaint in this regard. Parliamentarian Venerable Ratanathera refuted that he had sought the release of the Jude Shyamantha and of Jude Shamantha and pointed out that it was a decision taken by a special board that included officials from the prisons department. The allegations being levelled at him in this regard were unfair. The former president said investigations had revealed of an exchange of money between the family of Jude Shamantha and some person linked to the theatre. The parliamentarian emphasised that a comprehensive investigation must be conducted into the former president's claim. Leader of the Janatha Vimukti Peramuna Anura Kumara Dissanayaka says the government, without providing solutions for issues faced by the people, are taking efforts to suppress peaceful protesters.
He pointed out that all attempts taken in the past to suppress people's struggles have always been defeated. Parliamentarians Andhra Kumara Dissanayaka and Vijitha Herath visited the Valikada prison to inquire into the well-being of the 7 suspects taken into custody for allegedly damaging public property following the protest action in front of the police headquarters on the 9th of June. Parliamentarian Andhra Kumara Dissanayaka said that the arrests of the peaceful protesters indicate that the government is taking the effort to release those thugs who planned and assaulted peaceful protesters and young peaceful protesters into custody to suppress the movement. He said that if these young peaceful protesters can be remanded for 10 days for causing public property damage, then former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and his ministers and supporters should be remanded indefinitely for damaging public property as well. Bangladesh High Commissioner to Sri Lanka Tariq Ariful Islam says the time has come to further strengthen economic cooperation between the two countries.
The Bangladeshi High Commissioner said it will lead to progress in a number of areas including apparel, agriculture, health and investment. The Bangladeshi High Commissioner made these remarks when he called on President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the President's house in Colombo this afternoon. This year marks the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. During this period, both states were able to work very closely and amicably. President Rajapaksa also appreciated Bangladesh's support in the current economic crisis. The High Commissioner pointed out that there is an opportunity for both countries to strengthen cooperation in the fields of trade, tourism and education, and expressed confidence that Sri Lanka will be able to overcome the current situation expeditiously.
The demand for liquor has decreased by about 30%.
This is due to the recent increase in the price of liquor and the decrease in the income of the people in the country. It was revealed at the Committee on Public Finance. This was revealed at a meeting of the Committee on Public Finance chaired by Honourable Anura Priyadarshana Yapa, Member of Parliament, recently. Officials representing several institutions took part in the meeting to discuss plans to increase government revenue and their current status. The officials of the Sri Lanka Excise Department said that there were several problems in the Sri Lanka Excise Department reaching the target revenue due to the limited quantity of ethanol available for the production of liquor, limited number of diesel and fuel, and distribution problems. They also pointed out that the demand for alcohol has decreased by about 30% due to the increase in the price of alcohol and the economic hardships faced by the people. It was also stated that due to the sudden price hike, there is a tendency to increase the production of illicit liquor. The expected revenue of the Inland Revenue Department and its current situation were also discussed. Former Central Bank Governor Ajit Niwad Cabral says the decision to float the Sri Lankan rupee from the 7th of March was taken as a collective decision by the Monetary Board and not as a unilateral decision by a single individual.
He made these remarks while issuing a statement. The policy measures of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka are being formulated and implemented by a professional and technical team. The Monetary Board has the decision to take authority to implement the policy decisions reached by this team. The relevant statement was issued by former Central Bank Governor Ajit Niwad Cabral as an explanation over the claims made against him for making a unilateral decision to float the Sri Lankan rupee. 5 luxury vehicles that had been imported to the country under the guise of spare parts have been seized by the customs today at the Orugodavatta Customs Yard.
And according to the Customs Department, the value of these imported vehicles are more than 150 million rupees. The relevant vehicles were imported into the country in 2 containers from the United Kingdom a few weeks ago. Based on suspicion, the Revenue Monitoring Division of the Customs Department opened these containers today. The Customs Department seized vehicles including BMWs, Mercedes-Benzes and Audis following the investigation.
People are seen showing great interest these days to engage in cultivations as a remedy to face the anticipated food crisis. Udari Fernando is maintaining a successful farm in the 3rd floor of a new residential building in Taladuwa, Negombo. She's using only compost fertilizer in a farmland extending only 8 perches. She's also maintaining a poultry farm in the top floor of her residence. A success story of another female farmer using only organic fertilizer in her cultivations has been reported from Nugathalava. Chandani Kumari is engaged in growing many vegetables and fruit crops. A young farmer in Nelumdenio Kuruvita is maintaining a plant nursery using only solid and liquid organic fertilizer. He has commenced a project to produce 100,000 cinnamon plants for his area. The Agrarian Development Centre in Nagoda, Kalutara has conducted a program yesterday to educate general public on how to manufacture and preserve jackfruit-related products. The Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval to import goods from southern India to northern province in Sri Lanka.
And the relevant proposal was presented in the Parliament by Minister Douglas Devananda. Accordingly, essential goods including fuel and medicine are expected to be shipped to Sri Lanka from Kondicherry and Karaikal ports. The goods will be distributed at fair price rates from Kankasanture. The minister said that approval for this initiative was received after lengthy deliberations with the President and the Prime Minister. Accordingly, instructions have been directed to provide necessary facilities for this initiative following an intensive study. Under the first stage, essential goods are expected to be supplied to northern and eastern provinces, and under the second stage, passenger ferry services are also expected to be initiated. Well, that's it on local news. We'll be going in for a short break. We'll be back with news overseas.
හොඳම දේ විශ්වාසයෙන් ට්‍රීට් කරන්න. Prima Treats. Life is a treat.
Welcome back, and in your foreign news tonight, heavy rain, threadbare resources and rugged terrain are hampering rescuers in southeast Afghanistan, where a powerful earthquake is reported to have killed more than 1,000 people.
Unknown numbers were buried in the rubble of ruined, often mud-built homes by the magnitude 6.1 earthquake. The United Nations is among those scrambling to provide emergency shelter and food aid to remote areas in the worst-hit Paktika province. The head of the UN, Antonio Guterres, said that the agency had fully mobilized over the disaster. Health teams, medical supplies, food and emergency shelters were en route to the quake zone, UN officials said. But the Afghan officials today told it was proving very difficult for rescuers to reach affected areas by floods because of heavy rains last night. The earthquake struck early on Wednesday about 44 kilometers from the city of Khost, and tremors were felt as far away as Pakistan and India.
And in your sports news tonight, Sri Lankan cricketers have been able to climb the ICC rankings following the skills showcased at the One-Day International Series held against Australia. Dhananjay De Silva has been ranked amongst the first 20 players of the all-rounder category.
Dhananjay De Silva is ranked in the 13th position with 220 bonus points. He has also climbed 10 spots to the 62nd position in the ICC Men's ODI bowling rankings. He has further climbed 14 spots in the ICC Men's ODI batting rankings as well. Meanwhile, Charit Asalanka has also climbed 19 spots to claim the 32nd position in the ODI batting rankings.
And with that, we wrap up tonight's English news on Rupavahini. I'm Kasuni Balachandra together with Tilina Udayaratna signing off. Good night.